here? Oh, that sounds better. We'd like to welcome everybody out tonight. This is quite a hot issue, you can see, for both sides of it here. Traditionally, we've started these meetings out with a word of prayer, and then we've done the pledge. And turn the mic up. How high can I turn it? It's up all the way, they say. It's up all the way. I'll try to talk a little louder. How's that? Blow the people out the front so the back can hear. Commissioner Eckerly will give us a word of prayer, and then Commissioner Lewis will lead us in a pledge of allegiance.
God, we're grateful to be here tonight. We ask Thy Spirit to be with us. We're grateful for the many blessings we enjoy, and we're here to deal with countywide planning. We pray Thy Spirit to inspire all involved, and that we may do a job pleasing in Thy sight. And we offer this prayer. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I ask you to bear with me tonight. This is my first rodeo for doing this, and I'm going to lean pretty heavy on the other commissioners here that help us get through this and make it work. To start with tonight, we'll start with staff. Where is staff? Oh, there we are, over here. Doug will give his presentation, and then we can go from there. Doug?
I hope everybody can hear me. I'll hold this close to my mouth so the people in the back can hear. We'll have to make do with what we've got tonight, and I think we'll be able to work things out. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and this is the largest public hearing I've ever been involved with, so it's a testament to how important you feel your area is. But a few things we wanted to talk about tonight. Before we get going, there's some things that a lot of lay people may not understand, and they're not real difficult issues, but they're things that before we get into the presentation that you need to know. And the first thing I wanted to explain was what a TDR is. It stands for Transfer Development Rights. Currently, we have in our code the ability to do transfer of development rights. And so in this graph, you can see that we've got the A20 zoning in this area here, and the RA5 zoning in this area here. Our current code would allow development rights to be purchased and transferred into another zone. In this case, it'd be the A20 at a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 development rights for every 20 acres preserved, and that gets transferred into the P160 area. In the RA5, our current code allows for purchasing development rights, and every 5 acres preserved, you get 1 development right in the P160. The water has to be kept on the ground. It has to continue to be farmed, and the county council would determine whether this could be a sending zone and this could be a receiving zone. Another thing I wanted to explain is the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The general plan is a document adopted by the county, and it has land use provisions in it, it has economic development provisions in it, it has transportation provisions in it, and just as the name states, it's a general document. It's not real specific. And in the general plan, there's land use categories. Wallsburg is a land use area in the general plan, and it has general recommendations on how Wallsburg should grow. There's also the South Hills planning area that surrounds Wallsburg, and the general plan has recommendations for that land use area. As I said, the general plan is general in nature. The way we enforce the general plan is with specific zoning ordinances. So for example, when you drive in off of 189 into Main Canyon Road, on your right-hand side you have the A20 zone. The general plan states that that area should be very low-density residential, it should be kept open, and should be farmland, basically. So the way we enforce that is in the zoning ordinance, it's zoned 20-acre lots. So zoning ordinance accomplishes what's in the general plan, it's just more specific in how we enforce that. So this is the Wallsburg planning area in the black line here. Highway 189 out here, Main Canyon Road right here, and the town of Wallsburg right here. So that is the Wallsburg planning area, and it was designated, I think, originally as the irrigated valley floor. So you've got the A20 up here and the RA5 down here. This is the South Hills planning area, which surrounds all of Wallsburg, and would be the area, if TDRs were done, it'd be the area where those development rights are transferred into. You have a sending zone in the valley floor and a receiving zone in the P160. And again, that's up to the county council to determine whether it can or can't be sending or a receiving zone. So we'll be referring to the South Hills planning area a little bit tonight too. This is a zoning map that shows the current zones in the valley. And as I mentioned, in the South Hills, you've got P160 zoning. The P stands for preservation. You've got A20, agricultural 20-acre lots, and you've got RA5, residential agricultural 5-acre lots on the southeast end of the valley. Okay, the application that was submitted to us has a number of items on it. The first one would be to amend the Wallsburg planning area element of the general plan to allow alternative sewer treatment systems and amend the Wallsburg planning element and the South Hills planning element to refer to an overlay zone and the transfer of development rights, to allow the transfer of development rights. So that's one part of the application that we received. The next bullet here is the P160 zone is proposed to be added to the plan performance section of the code as the Wallsburg overlay zone to allow for density bonuses along with the option for TDRs. A plan performance overlay has more specific zoning guidelines. And for example, right now we've got a strawberry overlay zone, we have a mountain overlay zone, and that would allow additional density. Typically, it's if the developer provides additional amenities. So for instance, in an overlay zone, if the P160 were put into an overlay zone, there may be additional allowances for extra trails that are open to the public, or the developers asked to have additional density allowed for a school site or a fire station site or something like that. So it would allow additional density based on performance. That's what we were referring to, a plan performance section. The third item here is a rezone or approval to allow the A20, RA5, and P160 to be sending zones and receiving zones. So that in a nutshell is the application that we received. I wanted to go over the process so you understand the way things work. The application was received, we reviewed it, the staff reviewed it. Tonight, we're having the Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission does not approve anything, at least not at this level. They can't approve conditional uses and that type of thing, but they don't approve rezones or code amendments. So they're a recommending body only. So if they recommend something to the council, then the council has the authority to approve or deny it. And a lot of people think that once the Planning Commission makes a decision, it's done, and they don't bother going to the council meeting. That's very far from what needs to be done. So, County Council review and approval or denial. They are the legislative body, and the council has very broad discretion on rezoning, on general plan amendments, and on code amendments. They really don't have to have many findings to deny something or approve something. They can say, well, we like it and we feel like it's what ought to be done, or we don't like it and we're going to deny it. The third bullet statement here, depending on what the county council does, there may be additional public hearings for code amendments. So, for example, if the county council decides to go forward with some type of overlay zone or amendment to the code, tonight I have no code written. And there's no overlay zone written. And I didn't want to assume that the Planning Commission or the council was going to go one way or another. And I figured that if I wrote something, it would be wasting everyone's time when I didn't know which way they were going to head. So this is more of a philosophical review tonight of whether there should be additional density allowed in the P160, or whether the code stays the way it is and the general plan stays the way it is. And that's what the county council will have to decide if this body forwards it to them. I wanted to go through the goals and policies of the general plan. Now, the general plan is a 200 some odd page document, and our zoning ordinance is probably about 400 pages. I went through and found what I felt was applicable in the general plan for this proposal. And so there's some points that support what the developer's wanting to do. There's some points that maybe support what you people are considering is appropriate. But let me just go through these and indulge me for a minute as I read through them. There's goals and policies in the general plan that are not part of the Wallsburg element of the general plan. So this is on a county-wide basis. So on the top, 1.1.5, discourage development of sensitive lands such as wetlands, landslides, and stream corridors. So I think that was the intent behind the A20 zoning as you come in the valley off of 189. 1.1.6, preserve low-density land use zoning in geographically or ecologically sensitive areas and discourage modifications that would permit greater density. So if you've got an area that's very environmentally delicate, you don't want to allow additional density on it. 1.1.7, promote clustering of developments in mountain environments in a manner that will preserve scenic values, preserve and protect flora and wildlife of the surrounding area, minimize soil erosion, reduce the cost of infrastructure and public services, and reduce the impact of wildland fires. Going down to number 4, goal. The density of permitted development shall decrease as the distance from population centers increase. So the idea is that if you've got an incorporated town and you've got some TDR options, that a town should grow from the inside out. It shouldn't grow from the outside in. So you should have your greater densities surrounding an incorporated town. And that's what we've done in Heber. In their annexation declaration area, they have the ability to do a slightly higher density development, much lower than Heber, but slightly higher than otherwise would be allowed in the county. 4.1, objective. Develop land use policies that provide greater density for development adjacent to municipalities. So just what I was talking about. 4.1.1 policy. The development code shall provide for an increase in density next to centers of population, density receiving areas. If the development rights are removed from land, density sending areas, that has been identified as having a public benefit as open space. So you want to have a sending area be something that should be preserved. Okay, this is from the Wallsburg element of the general plan. So it's specific to that valley floor that I showed you that slide on. The first one, maintain A20 in historic pattern of open area. Housing is to be discouraged. Second bullet, code should allow for TDRs if these areas provide for a public benefit. So if it's something worth preserving, then TDRs should be considered there. The third bullet is lands can develop with the underlying zoning or sell development rights at a 4-to-1 ratio, allowing 4 units for every 20-acre parcel preserved. So that's in the general plan right now. All these things are direct quotes from the general plan. TDRs must stay in the Round Valley drainage area within established receiving zones. Consider the creation of a special service district to provide culinary water services and wastewater collection and treatment. The Planning Commission should create an agricultural protection program to protect agricultural lands and practices from complaints associated with non-agricultural growth and development on nearby property. And the last one, limited commercial development that provides services to recreational interests should be encouraged in the area south of Deer Creek Reservoir. So the applicant is proposing that commercial be allowed on 189, so that's something that's currently in the general plan. The general plan, when this language was put in, was done probably around 2001. What the code currently allows. So the code currently allows for clustering in the P160 with no added density. So the idea is that you can either do 160-acre lots and just have those, you know, from the top to the bottom of the mountain or vice versa, and or you can do a clustering option where you would take the net developable acreage, meaning you take the 30% slopes out and constrained lands, divide that by 160, and that's what you get as far as density, and you can cluster those. Could be clustered in 10-acre lots, 5-acre lots, 20-acre lots, whatever. It's up to the developer. But what that does is it saves the developer a lot of costs on infrastructure instead of running roads across the whole hillside. They can cluster and save infrastructure costs. The second one, the code currently allows for TDRs, RA5 and A20 as sending zones, and P160 as a receiving zone. And as I mentioned, that's with county council approval. The code currently allows for TDRs to have a transfer ratio of 1-to-1 for RA5 and 4-to-1 for A20. So as I mentioned, the applicant's submittal complies with a number of these things. The things that the code does not support right now and that would need to be amended on the bottom here, the code does not allow for additional density beyond the ratio, the 4-to-1 or the 1-to-1, does not allow for additional density beyond that ratio for TDRs as stated above, or it does not allow for an option to do planned performance developments. So that's, in a nutshell, what the developer or the applicant is asking for, is to do that type of scenario where he could have an option to get additional density for transferring development rights and cluster them on the foothill in the P160. I also wanted to go through the purpose section of the P160 zone. Now this is out of Title 16. This is the zoning ordinance, which is the more specific portion of our code. Sorry I'm going on so long, but I felt this was important to go through. Under the purpose, it says the purpose of the preservation zone is to establish areas in Wasatch County where development may be limited due to the remoteness of services, topography, and other sensitive environmental issues. Furthermore, the specific intent in establishing the preservation zone is for the following purposes. 1, protect natural features and sensitive environmental areas. 2, protect the county grazing and forestry land. 3, avoid excessive costs for public services which result from excessive scattering of residential dwellings in remote areas. 4, prevent excessive soil erosion and water pollution. 5, protect the present and future water supply of the county and surrounding areas, or county. 6, promote the raising and keeping of domestic and wild animals and fowl in keeping with optimum intensity of use consistent with recognized range management policies. 7, prevent the necessity of having to pay excessive taxes on grazing lands. 8, preserve and protect recreational opportunities. 9, allow residential development on a limited basis when services are not readily available but are appropriately addressed by the developer to the satisfaction of the county. And number 10, residents of the proposed development would have essential services provided at a level that would not impact their health, safety, and welfare, and provide these services would not be fiscally irresponsible for the county. Okay, I'm almost done. Possible findings. We always have possible findings in a staff report and in the PowerPoint presentation because the findings are what the Planning Commission uses to justify a motion. So when they get ready to make a motion, they always try to have these findings to say this is why we're heading this way with our motion, and these findings support our motion. So, and I put possible because this is my language, not theirs. I am a staff member that makes recommendations to the Planning Commission. So I recommend, they recommend, council decides. Possible findings, the current county code allows for clustering of lots in the P160 zone. The general plan recommends the use of TDRs as a means to preserve the A20 zone property. The general plan right now only states the A20. However, the code, Title 16, would allow the transfer of the RA5 into the P160 at the 1-to-1 ratio. The general plan recommends that TDR receiving zone be areas around incorporated towns so density decreases as you move away from towns, which is a generally accepted planning technique. The general plan encourages clustering in mountain environments to preserve open space but does not allow additional density unless part of a TDR at current ratios. The purpose statements of the preservation P160 zone, in staff's opinion, do not support the P160 area as a receiving zone, and especially for added density bonus consideration. Now we've got a conflict in our code because if you read the purpose statements, which we just went through, it doesn't lend itself to being a receiving zone and having additional density. So we've got a conflict there, but it's in our code and that's what's allowed right now. The land use code currently has a TDR ordinance that will allow density to be transferred from the RA5 and A20 zones into the P160. The county council determines which areas may be classified as sending and receiving zones. Second to last, the bullet statement. The current TDR ordinance has a transfer ratio of 4-to-1 for A20 and 1-to-1 for RA5. And last one, the general plan supports limited commercial south of Deer Creek on Highway 189. Okay. Possible recommendations. So the first one is allow the use of TDRs in the A20 and RA5 zones at the designated transfer ratio already allowed by code. The primary receiving zone should be the primary annexation declaration of Wallsburg Town. While this proposal is consistent with the general plan, it creates additional zoning issues and concerns that would need to be worked out with Wasatch County and Wallsburg Town. I have a slide of their annexation declaration next, but of course we'd need to work with Wallsburg Town on that and discuss those options. Also, the receiving zone or the annexation declaration around Wallsburg Town is A20 and P160. So this is a difficult issue that will take a lot more discussion, I'm sure. The secondary receiving zone could be the P160 zone. Appropriate areas of the P160 would need to be identified that would not put a strain on services, access, wildlife, etc., and accomplish the intent of the P160 zone as much as possible. Some incentives should be given to a property owner to cluster and use the TDR program. Otherwise, the mountainside could be subdivided into 160-acre lots and all public use would be lost or severely limited. Last bullet, in order to accomplish the intent of the general plan, which is to preserve the valley floor, there should not be a large menu. And what I mean by menu is in the plan performance section of the code, there's a number of options to get increased density. It could be additional open space, it could be additional trails, it could be a school site or a fire station site. If we allow a large menu of items, my fear is that an applicant would use the other menu items instead of the TDRs. And if the intent of the general plan is to preserve the valley floor and transfer those development rights out, then there should be a limited number of options instead of having 10 options and choosing the easiest options and not the TDRs, which might be difficult because you got to keep the water on the ground. Density bonuses, if allowed, should be limited to the use of TDRs and providing a public benefit, i.e. maintaining public access, continued grazing, clustering in such a manner as to preserve large amounts of open space. So, this is the first tier of the annexation declaration area of Wallsburg. And as I mentioned, this area on the north side is P160 and on the south side is A20. So it's not a clean-cut ideal scenario like we have with Heber City where we've got 1 acre zoning and we don't have constrained areas and that type of thing. But in keeping consistent with the general plan and the language in the general plan which says if you got a town, your density should be next to the town and grow from the inside out, not the outside in. So that's where my recommendations came from. That's all I've got unless there's questions from the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Doug. Turn it over for any questions for Doug. Okay, thanks, Doug.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I neglected to excuse Commissioner Gattmeyer and Commissioner Lyle tonight. They will not be here with us, so took care of that now. Paul, I guess you're next. Are you representing the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Doug, can I use the mic
Turn
over
the
here?
time over to Mr. Bird now.
Thank you, Chairman. Because many of you have seen my proposal before, I want to start with a few questions that have been asked of me since our previous meetings to start off with, and then I'll go through a technical presentation. The first one is, how many homes would be involved with the Wallsburg overlay zone? Our current proposal, with the base density, would allow for 235 homes on over 8,000 acres. If the density bonuses that we've requested from the county are approved, that would allow for 390 homes on the approximately 8,000 acres. That results in densities of 1 home per 21 acres to 1 home in 35 acres. Another common question that's been asked is, well, when would construction start? That question is a little bit difficult to answer. I'm not sure how long the process to obtain the overlay zone will be, if it's approved at all. But let's say it was approved, then any development would have to go through the master plan process, the preliminary approval process, and then the final approval process with Wasatch County. That process typically takes 9 months, sometimes a year, sometimes longer. So my opinion would be that the earliest that any construction would begin would be the spring of 2017, based on the timelines for the overlay zone and for the other density or other plan approvals. Another question that I've been asked is, well, how many years will it take to build out all of those homes, meaning the 235 to 390? So two of the property owners, when we put this petition together, were somewhat anxious to begin development. So I would see them beginning sooner rather than later. So maybe spring of 2017 if all the approvals go through. Some of the other landowners have expressed to me that they would like a plan, but don't necessarily have a specific timeline for development yet. Some of it is involved with estate planning for their family. Others would just like to have better options for their property. My experience has been, though, that with this number of units, with some other projects, that this type of plan would take 20 to 30 years to reach complete build-out. Another question that's been asked of me is, well, who pays for all of this? The roads, the sewer, the water, and other infrastructure. The developers would be responsible to pay for the development and construction of the roads, sewer, water, etc. If those utilities and roads are turned over to the county, which they typically are in subdivisions, the county would then maintain those and bear the cost. The only difference that you would see is if any of the roads or utility systems were allowed to remain private. The other question that I'm often asked is, well, why are you proposing this? In a minute, I'll show you a plan of what could happen if this 8,000 acres was developed using the current zoning on the property. The property owners that I represent would like to have a better plan for development, a better way. The other reason that we're proposing this is we're trying to implement some of the general plan recommendations that have existed for almost 15 years ago, which Mr. Smith has presented to you tonight. Although the general plan is now, this update was in 2001, nothing has been accomplished in a way to establish an agricultural protection zone to implement the TDRs or other things intended to maintain the valley floor. The last thing I would say is that there have been other circumstances where the recommendations in the general plan have been ignored. A good example of this is the Highway 40 bypass in Heber City. Going back to the 1970s, that was in the general plan. There were some attempts to reserve land near Mill Road so that the Highway 40 bypass could happen. Those attempts failed, and now there's a traffic problem because recommendations in the general plan were ignored. Doug, if you would go to slide 4, please. May I also borrow your pointer? Is there any way you can make that bigger? Is that as big as it will go?
That's it.
Okay. The area outlined in the purple line is the boundary of the overlay zone in the 8,000 acres. There are 2 small holes here that are property owned by the Forest Service. So even though that's within the boundary, that's not in the overlay zone. So the yellow squares that you see represent where home sites could be. The black line represents lot lines. So in this area, this is 160 acre lots. Down in this area, in the A20 zone, each of these lots is at least 20 acres. And in this area, which is in the RA5 zone, each lot is 5 acres in size. This is a plan that would not require any overlay zone, any changes to the code. This is under the current zoning ordinance. We could make an application tomorrow to ask for this. Now the county, in their general plan, does show that there will be a second access into Wallsburg. And so we've shown that on this plan. Main Canyon Road is here. This would be the second access through the Erkenbrack property. This road would generally line up where the kind of the dirt fisherman's parking lot is after you make the bend and head down the canyon. What I want to point out with this is that you can see that the development could occur way up on the mountain. The area that Mr. Smith just discussed that would be, the general plan calls to be preserved, could all be carved up into lots with home sites, homes along Main Canyon Road, here, along some of the other roads. The blue line that you see is a no-build line that we've proposed in the Wallsburg overlay zone. So from this line up is 4,900 acres. So in the Wallsburg overlay zone, there wouldn't be development above that line, if approved. Yet under the current zoning, you can see that there are 32 home sites up in this area, along with the road. The other thing that's concerning about this is that now all of it is just chopped up into 160 acre private lots, fenced off, no access to the public because somebody owns private property. In our proposal for the Wallsburg overlay zone, with the clustering of development, this area would remain open with public access, trails, etc. So again, this is what could happen under the current zoning ordinance. The landowners that I represent would not like to see development in this pattern, even though it is the current county zoning policy. To slide B, please. And then would you scroll down, I think, to page 6. That's fine, you can actually stop there. Just maybe scroll back up a little bit. So in our application to the county, we've identified 17 goals and objectives in the county's general plan that support the overlay zone. Because Mr. Smith has given a lengthy presentation about the general plan, I'm not going to go through these, but I would like to point out to the Planning Commission that the plan that we've put together for the Wallsburg overlay zone is based on the general plan. We've studied it quite a bit, and again, there were 17 goals and objectives just in the general plan that support this, besides all the things in the Wallsburg land use plan, which is also in the general plan that supported it. But just in the general goals and objectives for the county, there were 17 items that apply to our plan. Doug, if you now go to slide A. And then if you'd move forward to page 6, and then we'll also look at page 7. Sorry, go back one to page 6. So the benefits that we see to the Wallsburg overlay zone and the plan that we'll show to you in just a minute is, one, that it preserves agricultural land. Number 2, that it creates a no-build zone and protects 4,932 acres of the mountain. It accomplishes the county's general plan of having a second access for the valley to 189. Our plan also provides a way to connect existing dead-end roads and provide a better traffic circulation pattern, which will help all the demand that's on Main Canyon Road, and it also goes through the town of Wallsburg. It promotes a public trail system. It gives incentives to developers to establish essential community services, such as a gas station, convenience store, grocery store, health and medical services. It gives incentives to dedicate land for public parks, recreation facilities, schools, libraries, churches, etc. It also gives incentives for landowners on the mountain areas to open their land up for hunting and encourages special hunting units. It would give density bonuses to do that. Doug, let's go to slide 5 now, please.
That slide?
Slide 5. I'm sorry, get out of this and go back to the main. It says Wallsburg overlay, or the overall concept plan, number 5. Okay, thank you. So again, this is the 8,000 acres that's included in the Wallsburg overlay zone. Here's the no-build line that we pointed out earlier. As you can see now, this time there are no homes and lots in this area. Lots in this area are, instead of large 160-acre lots that would fence off large areas, these lots are ½ acre to 3/4 of an acre. Here's a site set aside for a public park and a church. Over in this area, there is a 1-acre lots. In this area, the lots vary between 5 and 6 acres. Over in this area, in the Erkenbrack property, although we haven't identified lot sizes, we've identified a pod or pods where single-family homes could be developed, and then also an area where commercial development would be likely. So what I want to point out with this is that I think the intent of the preservation zone is more likely met with the proposed overlay zone than with the current zoning regulations. Again, of the 8,000 acres, almost 5,000 is preserved on the mountain, plus other areas, large areas are preserved, and homes are clustered. In addition, you can see that their homes are not proposed on the agricultural land, either in the A20 or the RA5. The development rights in these areas would then be transferred and placed in these areas more on the foothill, but again protecting the mountain. So looking at the general plan objectives, the objectives of the P160 zone, and the recommendations in the general plan, we would request that you approve the Wallsburg overlay zone. And we feel like this plan does a better job of preserving the mountain, preserving agriculture, and is a better pattern for development. Now, in our work meeting that we had last week, there was suggestion of, well, maybe it's time that we take a look at the whole valley. And as I stated at that meeting, we don't disagree with that recommendation. So if the Planning Commission or Wasatch County would like to sponsor that, or even if a group can be found to sponsor a valley-wide look at how we can incorporate the objectives and goals of the general plan, we're all for that. In fact, not sure what the Planning Commission's inclination would be tonight, but we would ask that you not vote on it tonight. Let's see if a sponsor can be found, and at our December 10th meeting, let's see if somebody's willing to do it on a valley-wide basis. Okay. Thank you.
Hold the public questions till we're ready for public questions. Does the commissioner have a question for Paul?
Okay.
Go, what's that, Liz? Okay.
I will.
Whoop, that don't stretch very far. Oh, you're okay? Paul, that increases the density, when I wrote it down to 20, approximately 20 acres per house. And in the general plan, it calls to not increase the density in that 160. It's kind of a two-edged sword where it talks it in one spot, it says something different in another. But the thing that I read into it is it grows from the town out, and the 160 stayed as it was.
So in the general plan, you're right, there are some conflicts. One of them also says, this is from the Wallsburg land use plan, that transferable density credit of 1 unit per every 5 acres should be allowed, or what is determined by the legislative body as appropriate. And as Mr. Smith pointed out, the P160 has been identified as an area as a receiving zone. So if you take it out of the 820, you got to put it somewhere, and if the P160 has been identified, then just by the nature of transferring the density and then allowing the 4 times ratio, that's going to increase the density in the P160. So when I say it's 1 per 20 units, if all the density bonuses are allowed, or 1 per 135 with just the proposed base density, that's an overall density for the entire 8,000 acres. But realize some is P160, some is A20, and some is RA5.
Okay, but it also says that it would build from the town out. So what would be your take on not increasing anything in the 160 or clustering the 160 and moving the TDRs into town, into the Wallsburg proper, rather than move them to the 160?
I think the only conflict that I see with that is when we look at the annexation zone, we're right back into the A20, which is the land that the general plan says that we ought to preserve, or P160 anyway. Generally, it's a good planning principle to put density closer to the town center. So if we do a valley-wide study, I think that ought to be looked at. But I think what's ironic about this is that, hey, maybe we shouldn't put it in the P160, let's put it in the annexation zone. But then when we look at the annexation zone, it's largely A20 and P160 property, and we're trying to protect the A20 to begin with. So that kind of seems like most of the roads on this point right back to the P160 is the place we need to transfer the density to. From my point of view also, Mr. Giles, that protecting the mountain is important, protecting the agricultural areas are important. That largely leads to us putting the development on the foothill.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Bird?
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We will be getting to the public in a, still hear me? We will be going to public comment in a little bit. Right now, I would like to change things up just a little bit from our normal stuff. Wallsburg has appointed a committee, basically what I call a committee, to kind of be spokespeople for them. At this time, we would like to hear from them, and we would like to hold it around 15 to 20 minutes total. Understand there's more than one person that wants to talk. When that is completed, we will go to public comment. If there's still some issues that haven't been talked about that somebody wants to talk about, we would give them 1 minute each. So at this time, we would like to go there. We'll turn the time to Spencer Parks to start with.
I'm Spencer Park. I'm a resident of the county here in the valley. I'm going to be the quick person that starts off for our committee. We're going to have 6 different presenters, but we're supposed to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes each. We plan to. Doug already pointed out the ways that this was inconsistent with the general plan. I read a staff report. I think I found way more ways that it was inconsistent than it was consistent. I want to remind everyone again that the P160 zone, the P stands for preservation, and it stands for preservation for a reason. It's where we get our watershed, it's where our wildlife is. It's very important to us. And I also want to point out again that the P160 in the general plan was never meant to be a receiving zone. I know the TDR ordinance that's never been used says it can be, but the general plan specifically says that it's supposed to go towards town, which you've already mentioned. The healthy planning environment is has growth from coming from the town outward. I would like to point towards the town annexation. I'm going to show up a map next that Doug has that just includes the area of the zoning of the annexation that is in pink on that map. It is what the town proposes to annex in the near future. Now this is a map that we created that I went through. I didn't take the whole South Hills. I just took the valley of Wallsburg and the current density allowed with the zoning map for the current zones. I took the number of P160, the number of A20, the number of A5, and the town with their next annexation plan. If they annex and build at 1 acre density, which they can do more than that with their current zoning. I came out that the town is already, or the whole valley is already zoned with entitlements to a total of 2,588 ERUs. The general plan of the county right now says that the Valley of Wallsburg, this is from the county's general plan, their study, this isn't anything we did, but the county's general plan says that Wallsburg has the resources right now for 1,500 units, ERUs, equivalent residential units. So we already have over 1,000 extra ERUs that we don't have resources from, according to the county general plan. If I go ahead and take the A20 at 4 times the density, that number comes up to over 2,700. So we are already got more density than we have resources for, and that's according to the county's general plan, and I would like to point that out. The current WOZ area that they showed, it only, if it was built out to current zoning, it has, I think it was right around 90 units, depending on how you figured it out. They want to increase that 3 to 4 times to save the mountain. I love the math, I'm not good at it, so I don't understand how that saves mountain to increase the density 3 to 4 times. Maybe I'll get better at math. There's less than 300 homes in this whole valley right now. So what they're proposing is to double the amount in our preservation zone. The new plan proposes a highly problematic new intersection at the valley, and I understand it's in the county master plan, but UDOT's concerned about that intersection being put in. There's no timetable for that intersection being put in, or how the developers share in the cost of getting it put in. I think there's a lot of question marks on here. I mean, they say they will have hunting units, but nothing in the plan that I read says they have to be public. They could still be private and charge for them. The intersection we have at the end of the valley is already dangerous. We had a fatality less than 2 weeks ago at that intersection, and you probably have a hard time counting a year when we don't have one. And the current plan, with their current proposed densities, would add an extra 3,000 to 5,000 vehicle trips on that intersection. That's using around 10 trips per home, which is a standard traffic study number. I used 300 to 500 homes. The plan that's actually proposed is at 600. They have been whittling it down, so what I hear, but it's not written in the document that we have. The WOZ has 0 public support that I know of, unless you're on the payroll. The town has been circulating, the valley has been circulating a petition. We have over 3/4 of the valley signing it. We hope to have close to 90 by the time we have the council, and we will present those numbers and names to the county council, because we feel they're the ones that need to know what the voters want. We are not denying anybody of their property rights or their development rights. They show the plan of 180 acre lots as a scare tactic. Anybody that has ever worked in infrastructure knows that that plan will never come to fruition. Because anytime you put pencil to paper, it is never worth putting that much infrastructure in to spread the lots all over the whole mountain. They're going to go ahead and cluster anyway, as the general plan recommends, and they're going to stay down low, because when you do a spreadsheet, it just won't pencil to have roads, 10 miles of roads for 8 lots. It is just not ever going to be good planning or cost effective for any developer to ever do that. So, I mean, we are not saying they shouldn't develop, and we do not want to deny anybody their development rights or their property rights. We want to protect everybody's property rights and our current life, or our lifestyle and quality of life. We feel that the valley has a good zoning plan already in place that addresses the future entire valley and has areas and zones treated the same based on good sound planning principles, just not the pocketbooks of few. So I would like to turn the time over to Pete. He is our geologist that's been looking into the water system and the current data that we have. After that, we will hear from Paul Wilson, Boyd Whiting, Blake Allen, and Clint Hendricks.
Just a second here, we got to load up a map here that I've been working on. Oh, my name is Peter Nilsson. I'm a resident of the city of Wallsburg, but we also have in the family property out here. I'm a registered geologist for the state of Utah and state of Idaho. I currently work with the Utah Geological Survey in oil and gas and produced water out of oil and gas. We've got a lot of background in groundwater and hydrology. I think our concerns that we have is that, well, at least my concerns are that if you look at our valley, which we'll see here in just a minute on the map, we're a closed basin, very limited resources, whether it's a good water year or a low water year or higher low trending water years. We don't have big surface flows coming in from outside sources, streams like the Provo River. We've got some small canyons that provide flow in here. I've looked at the water, the well logs for parts of the valley, and they kind of suggest that the groundwater in the valley aquifer is probably very poorly connected with surface water recharge. Most of the recharge probably happens up in top of the valley, up in the mountains, up on the south side and down on the south valley down here. So with limited recharge potential, particularly now if you look at the weather stations that we have around the valley here, there's about 25 stations that I've started to look at. We are, like everybody else, on a general trend of lower precipitation, lower snowpack. So that just translates into lower recharge all the way around. The area that we have here in Wasatch County, we are in a moderate to severe drought for the last 5-6 years, with a trend in that same direction for the next several years anyway. There are several wells and sources of water that are starting to pump mud, pump sand. Some of them historically have been doing that. Others have just started in the last year or two. Now, on whole, that means that generally some of these wells dry up in the fall when you got a lower water recharge, lower water moving through the system. But with the addition of some of these others, that suggests that our general water table in the aquifers and in the valley fill is declining. It's the water table is moving north down the valley, and it's dropping down, so exposing some of the stream in these wells so they can't pump as much. The valley that we live in right here is such that we don't know the depth of the width of the aquifer. We don't know how big it is. We don't know how much water it contains. We don't know how much surface water interacts with the groundwater. We don't know the amount of recharge. There's a lot of variables in here that we don't know about in a limited resource that we have in this area. So I think what it boils down to is that we may not have water for any existing, well, we have water for existing development right now for our crops. It gets sparse in the summer and in the fall. I don't think we have any way of proving that we have potential water for additional wells, for additional developments. So a density increase, I think, is taking out of a limited resource that we don't know anything about. And you've probably heard of the news recently that they've had problems down in Union City, down in Cedar City. We've been studying it for a long time at the UGS. This isn't a problem that occurs over a few years, 10 years. This is a problem with drawing water out of the ground without looking at what you're doing over a long period of time. And so now that is impacting development. It's impacting a lot of things down in that valley, and that's from taking water out of something you don't know about. You don't understand what the system is for farm and for developments. And so I think that this should be not, we shouldn't have additional developments, additional density increases in a system that we know is on the decline. We don't know how much is there, and I think it would be unwise to add additional development in this particular spot right now at this time. So I think that's our gist, is we just don't have information, but we do know things are declining at this time right now.
One question.
Yes?
The wells we're talking about that are pumping mud and sand, are they ag wells or potable water?
Potable water right now, I think, as I recall, yeah.
And any idea how deep they are?
They're in the 60 to 85 foot depth range, yeah. So some of them, once again, some of them impact every year. We know they haven't, but the problem is now we're seeing a trend where some others are starting
Exactly.
to impact. So that just suggests that things are declining and moving out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul?
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Paul Wilson. I'm a resident of Wallsburg, and I'm here again to speak a little bit about something that's very close to my heart. Sometimes we get accused of some things, you know, we accuse the developer sometimes, but they come back and we get it. And one of them I'd like to talk about is property rights. You look at this crowd out here tonight, my estimate is probably 95+% of them people are property owners. Each and every one of them believe in their property rights. They want to use their property to the best of their abilities and their desires. But these people have, through the last few years that I've been here, they've done it according to the county code. So what we believe in property rights, we believe in equal property rights. So when we get given density to other people, then we're not equal. So that is the point we'd like to make to you. When you get into the heart of this application, it's about density. I might be mistaken, but I think this application was presented to the county as a planned performance development. Planned performance development has 3 zones in it. It has the transition zone around Heber City, has the mountain zone, which I think the main part of that was to take care of the Jordanelle Valley, Jordanelle Basin, and a small recreation zone that was designated out in the Strawberry Valley. All very specific zones. When you get down into the performance development zone a little tighter, it gets very specific on each one of these zones. The last thing this wants to do, or the county commission wants to do, is bring this P160 into a planned performance development. You will create a precedence that will open up Wasatch County, the whole valley wide, to look just exactly like the Jordanelle Basin. And you won't be able to stop it. There is no reason to put this P160 into planned performance development. And that's one of the amendments that you've got on your agenda tonight. I would not even consider it. And we do want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our side to you. And we know you'll do a good job for you. We appreciate what you do for us. Thank you.
Commissioners, good evening. My name is Boyd Whiting. I've lived here in Wallsburg Town for close to 35 years. My grandfather grew up here in Wallsburg many, many years ago, so I feel like I have some deep roots. I am on the Wallsburg Town Board and was elected to come and present Wallsburg Town's view on this proposal. The first thing I would say is that we are unanimously and unequivocally, that's a big word, opposed to this proposal. Many of the reasons have already been stated, so I won't go into those again, but I'll just say 2 or 3 things that we've talked about and some things that I feel personal about. First off, there's talk of a proposed special service district to service water and sewer for this additional development. Wallsburg Town has spent in excess of $1 million over the past several years improving and maintaining our public utility, our water system that serves primarily the town of Wallsburg, but also several residents that live in the county. We don't feel that the establishment of a special service district would be in the best interests of Wallsburg Town or the residents of Wallsburg Valley. So we're opposed to that. Of course, as has already been stated, this proposed development ultimately will result in additional tax burden for all the residents of Wasatch County. I don't believe if you polled all of the residents of the county that anyone would be in favor of increased taxes. Once again, I would reiterate that we're not proposing that any property rights be taken away. Rather, that property rights be preserved as they are currently zoned and as they were wisely zoned many years ago by our county fathers. One last thing. In Wallsburg, we're such a small community that we feel like we have kind of a closeness and some unity among all of the residents, both the town and the county. In fact, Wallsburg Town is a fairly small entity within the valley, but we provide this public building, the park, the cemetery, and many other resources to the entire valley, not just to Wallsburg Town residents. We feel like a development like this development that is proposed would fracture that and start a splinter that would perhaps drive a wedge among the residents of Wallsburg proper, Wallsburg Valley, us versus them type of attitude. We would petition you and beg you to please keep Wallsburg small, quiet, and charming, just the way it is now. Thank you.
My name's Blake Allen. Most of you guys know me. I've been in front of the Planning Commission numerous times with my own projects and things that I've had. I'd also like to thank you guys for having this meeting over here tonight in Wallsburg. So we're all But if this was me bringing it in and putting it here, I would have come in and asked you guys if I had 1,600 acres in the P160, that would give me 10 homes. Would you transfer that into the R20? Most likely that's going to be no, I would not. But that's exactly what it is here. It's R20, R33, R35, R25, whatever it is. But if you allow that to go there, why wouldn't you allow it on the other side in 5 years on the top side? You can't take P160, change it all into R20, whether it's got lipstick on the pig or fluff on it or whatever it is. At the end of the day, that's what you end up with is a R20, R35, R33 zone. It's not what it's made for. It just doesn't work out. But bottom line is that's what they're asking for is a R20, R35. Thanks.
Thank you.
Clint Hendricks, I'm a county resident here. We've talked a lot as we've gone over things as a committee, and I just wanted to summarize for you guys what the actual facts are. This is a topic that is very close to a lot of people's hearts, so I just want to stick with just the facts tonight. So, the facts as presented. 1, you've got a discrepancy in the zoning numbers between what is currently zoned and what the carrying capacity is under the general plan. We know that's at least 1,088 ERUs. Fact, we have a geologist telling us that we simply do not have the information to make this kind of a decision at this time. Your hydrology report's over 50 years old. We need more information before we move forward with this kind of a decision. As Blake stated, you're looking at changing a P160 into a residential 21 plus acre. That's straight up zoning change. That's all that is at the end of the day. Also, that is a direct contravention of the stated preservation policy within the general plan. Sorry. When the stated purpose of the general plan is to preserve P160 area, but at the same time allows it to be a receiving zone, that's a discrepancy in the plan that needs to be addressed before anything moves forward. We need to move forward with a general plan amendment, a code amendment, that resolves that discrepancy one way or the other. Now, as far as private property rights are concerned, I think Paul stated it very well. Everybody's a big fan of private property rights. The representative for the developer has stated himself tonight that they could submit a plan tomorrow that would allow them to build. If they submitted that plan tomorrow, speaking on behalf of myself, I would not oppose that plan if it was a plan submitted within the current zoning. I have no problem with current zoning. I think it's a good plan. So I would not oppose it if they did submit a plan tomorrow based on that. Also, it doesn't implicate their private property rights when they state that they can do it and they would be approved for building. So, as we talked about in the work meeting, the only option at this time is to, at this time, deny this plan, but let's move forward with a comprehensive resource-based plan. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the committee for their comments. I think they've done a real good job. We will open it up to public comment this time. We'd like you to come to the microphone, state your name if you still felt like that you haven't been represented here tonight, and we will give you 1 minute and go from there. Go ahead. Tom.
1 minute, that's awful chintzy.
That's pretty chintzy, Tom. You can...
My name's Tom Hicken. I'm 5th generation Wallsburg resident. I'm the 1st generation that does not have the last name Wall. I'm gonna talk fast. When I was growing up here, there's around 200 people in this valley. Now there's upwards of 1,400. That development has came under the current zoning ordinances that we have. That has been done in conformance with and compliance to the zoning laws as they stand today. They were first enacted in 1965. The proposal of the Wasatch Overlay comes and proposes a development that is contrary to almost all of those laws and ordinances. The general plan is only a proposal. It has no binding effect. But the zoning ordinances that have been in place for 50 years do. They come and they want to make this development now, change the ordinances and the laws so that they comply to the development. How is that fair for the rest of us that's lived here for 61 years? And with all due respect to the counselor that's making this pitch that it's going to enhance our lives, my experience tells me the first time these new residents hear a shot ring out when we're hunting over here, they'll call the deputy because they don't want those wildlife slaughtered. The first time they hear a tractor and baler before daylight, they'll be on the phone to the deputy again because it's going to upset. My challenge to the developer is this, and to the commission, and to the council.
you make the case that this is going to enhance our lives, that this is going to advance us and make it better, we'll listen to what you have to say. But for the time being, this is a government of, for, and by the people. The very pretext to that is to protect us from overwhelming influence and, frankly, overbearing influence imposed on us by people with money and who have the power to exert that influence on us, we people that don't have it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shauna Raby, a property owner here, and I wasn't kicked off the committee. I didn't decide to do this until tonight. But I'd like to disagree with Mr. Berg about that the WOZ plan conforms with the general plan. Just after work, not being paid, I found 14 different goals and objectives that were in direct contrast against the general plan and the WOZ. There was no match between those. And Paul cautioned that you follow the general plan so we don't have a problem with like we do with the Highway 40. So I would just like to agree with him on that point, that if we don't follow the general plan, then we will have problems. And so I wanted you to consider some of the things that were written in the general plan. That policy 116, preserve the low density land and zoning in geographically and ecologically sensitive areas. According to Mr. Berg himself, it's been 5 to 15 years since that study was done, so it's about time for that study to be done again. Policy 1.1.7, preserve the scenic values. We don't think that the WOZ protects that. Policy 1.1.8, assimilate new development with working agricultural uses. We would like to see, what those working agricultural uses really are in our valley, and then we can make a decision whether or not we want to protect them. Goal number 2, preserve the present air quality of the county. We're very concerned you add 300 homes with the amount of travel that will bring, that you will not be protecting the air quality. The rapid growth, goal number 3, that the plan reviewed every 5 years. We don't feel like it's been reviewed. We feel like it's been taken over by 15 people. Goal number 4, we talked about that already. Goal number 5, we talked about that already, the water. Goal number 9.3.5, the cumulative effects of furniture development and traffic studies and roadway designs. This has not been done. Goal number 11, develop an economy which supports the desired lifestyle of residents of Wasatch County. So when we talk about quality of life is addressed in the general plan. Thank you.
My name is Abby Hendricks. I'm a resident of Wallsburg. I'm not multi-generational, but I love it nonetheless. I would like to bring up a specific landowner. No, she won't let me hold her. That's why I'm holding her. There is a specific landowner, and I only know this because it's directly behind my house. And I would like to know from the developers, I would like to understand what is the agricultural land that is being preserved by Lon Neal's property. I want to know why he's going from 44 lots to 27 in a P160, and he's not, I don't know, where's the ag land he's preserving? I look at this map and I cannot figure that out. I think that there's just answers that need to be answered. To go from 4 to 27 in one landowner's P160, I feel like their benefit should be they get to cluster. And I think the financial gain from going from 4 lots to 27 is just extreme when there's no agricultural land that's being preserved on the valley floor from this particular landowner. I only bring this up not to pick on one particular landowner, but to point out that I feel like this is overreaching, and that I feel like maybe there's people that have joined in on this plan that is not appropriate for this transfer of density.
That everyone then had the opportunity.
No. You know, it's said that if you're going to tell the truth, oh, it's Ann Clonizos, Klonizos. And I have been here since, for 63 years, unfortunately. And the first schoolhouse in the valley became a part of my great parents' home. So I do have a little valley presence. And anyway, it has been said that if you're going to tell the truth, to make it funny so that people don't want to kill you. And we went to a meeting last week, and several people in the county have talked to me about this specific issue, and I felt like I needed to answer them and talk to you guys about this issue at the same time. The issue is Bob Getmeyer, who is the county planning chairman.
Hold it down, please.
Who is the chairman of your county commission, right, guys? I mean, the planning commission, correct?
If this is a personal attack,
No, it's not, sir.
excuse yourself and leave.
No, it's not a personal attack at all.
Well, how can he be the issue?
He's the issue because he was there at the planning meeting, and I felt like that was a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
I think that since we let Bob officiate over last week's meeting, that I know you guys won't be influenced by him, but I do think that and the fact that there's also a brother-in-law of Mike Nelson on the Planning Commission, that those members, from your point of view, that it is a conflict of interest and we don't want that undue influence upon you guys, which I'm sure you won't do.
Thank you.
Just a little reminder.
Let me enter in here just a minute. We don't want to be here all night. We want to hear from all of you, but if you have something new that hasn't been brought up, we would like to hear about it tonight. So with that in mind, go ahead.
My name's Lindy Rodabaugh. I live here in Wallsburg. And I have a question. Rodabaugh, Rodabough. So I have a question. I don't know if Paul can answer this for me or Doug, but the no build line that they're proposing, above that's in the current general plan, is that really buildable ground? Or is that in sloped areas that is not actual buildable ground?
30% is where we draw the line at. So anything that's 30% could be built on.
So above that's actually in the zone?
You could have 30% right here, build a house on it, and then go on up the mountain for your other 160 or 158 acres.
Okay.
Chairman.
Oh, go ahead.
The area that was identified on our map in the darker red, that was slopes 30% or more.
Okay. All right, and then I have a concern about, you guys are proposing to preserve 4,932 acres by having that no build line. In the future, if this was to pass, and in the future, if another developer came in, who's to say that preserved land couldn't, that developer couldn't come in and do exactly what's happening right now, and then in the future that would not be open space. That would be, again, developed like what they're proposing now.
Thank you.
And just a few more things. People have said this, but I just want to reiterate. I have a well, and in August and September it does suck sand, and this will impact the quality of my life along with anybody that lives in Wallsburg. And by doubling Wallsburg, it's going to really segregate the community, like Boyd Whiting said. And just a reminder that this is a legislative action. This is not anything that you guys have to vote yes on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lee Young. I live in Wallsburg, Epsom County, and property owner. Lived here my whole life with my family, and straight from my great grandfather. But thank you, Planning Commission, for coming over tonight and hearing everyone out. Some may be emotional, but most of it's facts. And facts one, we all drive through the valley. I live on the top end of the valley, and I drive through. And if we're adding more density here, who's paying for the city's roads that we're driving through every day? Is it Wallsburg City? Because that's who pays for it now. That's one point that hasn't been brought up tonight. And then homes, we started out with Mike's plan of coming in here with a lot of homes, and it keeps going down. The numbers keep going down, with the exception of 1 acre lots on his place, right? But everything else goes down. Now, does that make it look better to me? It does to me. It makes it look better, right? But it's still in all, you start high, you go low. And then other point, commercial property down, commercial areas down on by 189. So if someone's going to jump off 189, a 55-mile-an-hour road, if you're not me. I drive a little faster than that, but you're going to jump off there to go to a store? I disagree with that. I don't see that happening. I can turn the corner and drive into Heber City just the same. We have our little community store that used to be here, and if we had gasoline in it and other things, maybe it would still be here, but it's not. But anyway, convenience stores, I don't mind driving to them, and neither does most of my friends out here in this audience. And Commission, also, we're talking about one development on that side. Okay, and we're going to approve that, and we're going to change this from different zonings. This is a zoning problem, too. You change something, it changes all the way around. My friends have brought up tonight that if we change that on one place, we have to change it in another. And, on the east side, the west side, south, the north side, everything changes. And so with that being said, other than, most of Wallsburg, we're generally good people. We may make a few poor decisions, but most of the poor decisions usually come in from the outside. Thank you.
My name is Linda Maxfield. I'm a resident of Wallsburg. Our well is 300 feet deep, and they drilled above us, and we sucked mud this year only for 2 weeks while they were in. They haven't even got their house built yet. That was just the test run. Okay. Again, I would like to ask about the restrictions on the deeds on the open land. Are they permanent or are they flexible? Do they expire? That's one of my questions. The open land, will it always be open? Is it really open to the public, or is it open for the use of the people in the subdivision? That's a question I really have. Secondly, Centerville just voted to trap and kill 100 deer. Unanimously voted. Well, I'm sure we all share our pastures with the deer. If we have a subdivision that is our size or larger, we get outvoted. So I'm against, I don't know how you put a restriction on it so there's a no-kill zone. I'm all for hunting, don't get me wrong. I like hunting, but trapping and killing is a whole different story in their territory. The commercial out on 189 would basically kill any hope of Wallsburg for having commercial within here. We can't even keep the little convenience store going. Why would we benefit from something going in out on 189? as they said, the traffic, the non-support, it would be empty spaces, in my view. Thirdly, the secondary road that they propose goes out exactly the same entrance within 1,000 feet. If there is a disaster out there, if there is a reason why we need the secondary egress, why would we put it in the same mouth of the canyon? I mean, I understand it meets the need, the requirement for a secondary egress, but it doesn't actually meet the need to get out of town. We would still be trapped.
Thank you.
And that's it. That's all I have.
My name's Ryan Horton. I grew up here. My mom and dad just live right up the road. Sorry, I'm not super good at public speaking, but I want to understand two things. One of the proposals is that they would keep the hunting rights for the top of the mountain. As most people know in this valley, those hunting rights are gone. Most of that's private, and we are not allowed up there unless you get permission from those. So I don't see how it would change, as in the land itself would not change. So them saying that the hunting rights would be opened up, I believe is almost a lie. And then I also, and on the overlay committee themselves, there's two families on there, and I could be wrong. I may be dead wrong on this, but the Moreland family and the Ashton family, I believe the Morelands were never part of it, and I believe the Ashtons have dropped out. Now the Ashtons have a big chunk of water, and the Morelands have a big chunk of land as well with the Ashtons. I think since these families, and maybe I'm wrong, since these families have dropped out, it totally changes the whole dynamic of what they're trying to do with these big chunks of land gone. I think this needs to be thrown out and start completely over with the proper and right information. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everyone that's commented. I think they've all been really well. I'm going to, we're going to discuss it now, open it up for discussion among the commissioners.
It's really exciting to see this many people get together for a cause, especially a cause that influences their own community, their own environment. The one thing that hasn't been brought up yet, that's mostly been emotional, I don't want this in my backyard kind of a thing, is that development brings new things. In this case, 200 homes, 300 homes, whatever it is, stuck over on the side of the hill. But it also brings a whole lot of new people and a whole lot of new thinking and a whole lot of new children to play on the soccer teams where Wallsburg would grow. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. You people all moved here because Wallsburg was a nice little rural community. That's the same reason I moved to Center Creek. But it's inevitable that we grow because the people down in the valleys, they want to be up here and then work down in the valleys. So the people are going to be moving up here any chance they get. They'll be buying property, they'll be developing property. Now, the thing about the developers is, as long as they follow our rules, which are in place, that you can all read them and they read them before they do anything. As long as they follow the rules, this planning commission has to give them whatever it is that they're asking for. Now, we can't make policy that isn't in tune with our zoning and our building codes. So keep that in mind, that we're not the bad guys. But our hands are tied. If you want a lawful society, we have to follow the rules. And you are the ones that make those rules by the guys that you elect, in this case, to the county council. They are the ones that have the ultimate say in how the rules go. So tonight, we're just here to hear information, and we can pass on whatever we learn to the county council, and they will make that decision as to whether to have a Wallsburg overlay zone or not. But if the rules have been followed, it would be against the law to not allow it. So keep that in mind. If you want to change the situation, change the rules. And you change the rules by electing people that you can influence. So thank you.
Can we ask you a question?
No
Can we ask you a
questions.
question?
It's been closed.
We have to say our names.
John Jacobs Meyer just addressed you. This is Jay Eckerly, Commissioner Eckerly, that will address you now.
By the way, thanks to our chairman. Nice job.
Whoa. Thank you, Jay.
I only have 3 points to make, and the one is already been made. This is an excellent public hearing, and I appreciate staff bringing it on site as well. Second point I would make is the applicant brought up the potential for a sponsor for additional planning. The only thing better than a little planning is more planning. So I'm not interested in voting tonight, respectfully, just because we may have the opportunity for additional planning. And this isn't a sprint. This is a prompt time frame. So we have time for additional planning. The last point I have, it's interesting to see what will actually drive this in the end. But water is the big issue, both the quantity of it, and then I also serve with the health department. And the health department is charged to make sure our water remains pristine. So, you know, it's the volume and it's the quality. And that's a very big issue out here. So more planning. We'll watch the water very, very closely, and it's nice to be on site with this kind of a public hearing.
You're a tough act to follow. My name is Liz Lewis.
Commissioner Lewis.
I agree in everything these two gentlemen have said. One thing we do need to remember too is any decision on the P160 zone affects the entire county. And certainly there are some issues that probably need to be re-looked at in the P160 zone, as I believe the transfer of development rights do need to stay within the populous area and not in the outlying areas where the P160 zones are. I agree. I don't know if we're ready to make a vote tonight, but that's not my decision either. So anyway, that's the only comments that I had. And also, I think there needs to be a broader look at the entire valley before any decisions are actually made.
Commissioner Giles asked if we had his back. We said, sure, you turn around, we'll be gone. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, not on this, on various commissions and committees around the county. And this has been the hardest one. I've studied it longer and harder than anything I've ever looked at. And I'll tell you what has bugged me, and this is a rhetorical question I'm going to throw out to all of you. The thing that bugs me about it is that I think universally this group would love to preserve the agricultural nature of this community and the agricultural ground. And the question I have is, do the current ordinances or this suggestion that we're looking at, which is new, it's not in the current, I agree with all of you, it's not in the current law that they are proposing new law. is there a way to preserve that? Is there a way to preserve the agricultural land? Maybe the 20-acre zone does it. At least it comes closer to it. The 5-acre zone is worthless to preserve agricultural land. I've watched it all over the valley, and what happens is that somebody will eventually subdivide those 5-acre lots. When they divide those 5-acre lots, you get a house and a field of weeds. That's what you get out of it. So I will throw out a rhetorical question. Would it be wise to think about doing TDRs, which apparently aren't allowed in the current law, into some of the 5-acre area? If you took and looked over the whole valley, would it be a wise decision maybe to transfer some of those development rights into some of the 5-acre areas, which would not, because a lot of that, well, not a lot of it, but some of that 5 acres isn't really agricultural land. Some of it's outside of agricultural land. Would it be a feasible thing to transfer some of those rights into that area, let them build half-acre lots in that part which doesn't preserve any agriculture, and in that way save the whole west side of the valley? After doing this for this amount of time, I've always believed that if you're going to have open space, you've got to pay for it. There's no other way to get it. You can't legislate it. You can't take somebody that has a valuable piece of land and say, for my sake, you keep farming that and don't do anything else with it. Some way you've got to allow them to have some kind of compensation to keep that open, or else be rich enough to buy it all yourself and keep it open yourself. So I just give this to you as a rhetorical question because I don't know. I think it would really be nice to be able to say at the end, because this has brought it up to the forefront now, be able to say, okay, we now have all this west side and all the other agricultural land preserved. It's going to be that way forever, or until the next council gets elected, whichever comes first. So think about that. I agree with you that we're not ready to take a vote on it now. I also agree that the current land ordinance as it exists has done service to this valley for a long time. And I am not a particular fan of overlay zones. I think they have been less than successful anywhere in the county. We find that in many of them, we're now revisiting them with increased expense to the county and everybody else trying to decide the future of something which didn't exactly evolve the way people thought it would 10 years ago. And so I'd be hard pressed to encourage overlay zones or special service districts. They're just hard, and I'm not sure that that's successful. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have any more discussions or things that you'd like to talk about? We'll need a motion tonight.
We need a motion to go to the county.
Well, whatever you want to do. We have talked about if it does get continued, it'd be the December 10th meeting, and we do have the senior center reserved for that. It's up to the council whether they want to continue that to that date or indefinitely, or talk about having another party do a study for the whole valley. It's up to you guys.
I like the study that was brought up. I think we, as a group, need to look at the whole valley. I said that at the beginning, at the first meeting we ever had on this. I'm still a believer in that. I like the current zoning. You know, it does kind of keep the density down somewhat. But it also allows for some building too. But, like I say, I think we need to look at the big picture, not just a piece of the pie. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but we'll need to have some kind of a motion to continue this to the 10th. Now, I haven't closed public comment, which I can do, and then we would not have any more public comment at that meeting. It would just be a meeting to hear other issues. If you think there's going to be more issues when we decide to do this big, the whole Wallsburg plan, which I think there will be more questions, we can leave it open to public comment.
I'll go for the continuance if their questions are written on paper and handed to us. We've heard the same things over and over now, what, 3 times?
Okay.
So if they have a question and they would like us to answer it, just write it down and give it to us.
Okay. We heard that. That's not a motion yet, is it? Or?
No, I'll make a motion.
Okay, Jay, Jay's ready to make a motion.
I would move that, that we close public hearing with thanks and gratitude, and that we, and in this motion I also noted it's the applicant who brought forward the notion of additional planning with outside sponsorship to help look at the broader area. As I mentioned earlier, I think that's why. So the motion is to close the public hearing, proceed with seeking a sponsor for additional area-wide planning, and proceed to the December 10 meeting. So we carry this forward. What would you want me to add to that? Is that sufficient or anything else?
What? Yeah, I can borrow your microphone.
No.
If we do that and have an outside planning come in and do the role of planning the whole valley floor or the whole valley, what do you want to have happen on the 10th? I've already talked to Mountain Land Association of Governments down in Orem, who helps with transportation planning and planning efforts for Summit and Utah and Wasatch counties. They've said that they would be happy to do that, but I'm a little concerned that we've heard a lot of people talk about the existing zoning and the general plan that has served the valley well for a number of years. I'd hate to have MAG come up here and spend 3 months or whatever it takes for them to do a plan for the valley and get back to the point of let's just keep things the way they are. So I guess if it's continued to the 10th, I need to know what you want me to do between now and then to address your concerns and to move forward.
Is this the same group that you all were thinking of, Meg?
It's one of the possible groups, but that's why we're saying let's let the county decide if they want to sponsor it and who they would bring in.
What would be possibly?
The county.
What is the proposal that's on the floor now?
We will tell you in a minute.
Thank you.
We're working it out.
The county pays Mountain Land Association of Governments, and there will be no additional cost. So they are the organization that did the Wallsburg Town General Plan, and it would be a similar process. I anticipate they would want to do some open houses, some visioning, and spend time determining what and how the best way to take into consideration maintaining open space, maintaining the hillsides, and that type of thing. But like I said, I'm concerned that people may just be interested in keeping things the status quo, and in the end, we waste their time with it.
Is this something we decide or the county council decides? In other words, all we're doing is giving them advice. And if our advice is that we have somebody else check it out before they decide, is that what we can pass on to them?
I think it's we who ask for planning.
Well, it would be, but I think they would need to ratify that. So if that's the route you're going down, then rather than continuing to the 10th, it could be a motion to go forward to the county council for discussion on whether they want Mountain Land Association of Governments to work on a plan for the valley, or whether you're gonna have further discussion on it before you do that.
Well, you know the council, do they want that?
There's about half of them here, so.
I know.
I have
That's why they're hiding in the back row.
I have talked to several members of the council, and they felt like if we were gonna do that, that Mountain Land Association of Governments, who is a separate entity, might be a good choice to do this. I have talked with Mountain Land Association of Governments, and they said, like I said, they're willing to do that for the county. And I suspect that what we have is some stakeholder groups that would include the county, that would include the Wallsburg contingency, and I don't know who else, probably Wallsburg Town would be involved with that as well.
Still want a motion?
We're still after a motion.
I would move that when we close public hearing, we ask staff to proceed with the search at MAG or others to look at additional planning. I would like to see that planning have particular emphasis relative to water, both supply and quality. And we move forward either to the county council or you keep it with us and set a date when you're ready. That must not have been it.
Sounds like John was.
No, it's our responsibility to advise the county council on what we think they should do. And we just keep having meetings, and we're not doing our job.
I guess what I would say is, if the council wants another party to do that, it's either using Mountain Land, which wouldn't cost anything other than the money we pay anyway towards them. But if we use someone else to do the planning, then it would be an additional cost. So where they control the funds, I suspect it'd be something that they would want to discuss before I go forward.
So they would need to deny this and then say for the future, is that?
We would make a motion. James already made a motion. We need to act on his motion.
I'd like to clarify the motion.
We would like that.
We used MAG and go ahead with that, which we've already used.
And what about the council? You want?
Does it require going there? Can you say with MAG?
I suspect we'd want to go to the council and discuss it with them.
I think they would need to authorize it.
I saw some nods.
And if that's the case, then the meeting we discussed is December 23rd, I think was the first time they could have it on their agenda.
So I have that here.
No?
Yeah.
We need on the second?
December 2nd? Okay.
I wouldn't need to wait till the 23rd.
It's up to you if you want to go on a second.
And it goes to the county council. That's my motion. You can call for it.
Forward.
Okay.
No recommendation.
What we've done, as we discussed it here, we have a motion on the table, and if we want it to be read back, we can have Rick read it back, but my understanding is that we asked Mountain Land.
First, close public hearing.
Yes, okay. Closed public hearing would be first.
We ask staff to proceed with MAG to do additional area-wide planning.
Have MAG proceed with the council, or the staff, area-wide, and do Wallsburg as a whole area, look at it.
And then go back and consult with the county council.
And then consult with the county council. That's the motion. We have a second. Motion dies for the lack of a second. More discussion.
Go ahead, Doug. What? Go ahead, Doug. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think we'll be all go out for ice cream.
Did I pull it out? Wow. John's going. John. Okay. One comment, and that is, if we do close public comment, and we probably ought to, we've heard, we've been through it quite a bit now. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have a chance to speak to this many times in the upcoming weeks and months. As the council looks at it, and other people look at it, there'll be plenty of other public meetings that you'll have a chance to comment in. And I think I would move that we do close public comment, that we continue this to the next meeting with the recommendation that we send to the council to investigate the possibility of having an outside consultant look and see if they think it's necessary for us to revisit Wallsburg plan.
That's your motion?
That's my motion. Second.
It's been moved and seconded, the motion. All in favor, say aye. Oh, what is it, Doug?
Just the date. 23rd.
The second, I heard.
Well, as I count on my calendar, the second doesn't give us the 14-day public notice required, so it would have to be either the 16th or the 23rd.
23rd then? Go for the 23rd? Okay, make that part of the motion. The meeting of the 23rd on the council.
I'm busy on the 23rd, Christmas shopping.
There you go.
Come to your house.
We wouldn't be meeting.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't.
We wouldn't be meeting.
We're passing this to
We're passing it to the county council with recommendation that we look at the big picture through whatever.
That's what I thought the motion was, but we pass it to the county council. No decision.
And they may meet on the 23rd.
All right.
Yeah, Rick, did you get most of that?
Okay.
We have a motion, and I've talked about the motion. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. That will stop public comment then, as you heard. You will have lots of times, I'm sure, for more public comment through these periods as we go forward with this. This is going to be a journey. I don't think it's going to happen overnight. But I do appreciate all of you coming out tonight, being civil about this. We've accomplished an awful lot, and we'll be moving forward with it. So thank you. Hey, thanks.